will not say what they are going through, and we will not learn how to be there for people with such problems because they are not coming out, you know. But when people come out, and that's why I really speak out, because people ask me questions. In the last 2 months, I've gotten 3 calls from people who are suicidal. And they called me because I spoke. I remember there's one time I was doing a show at K24 and I was talking about my experience. And I got home and I found a Facebook DM and somebody told me, you saved my life today. Because what apparently happened, they wanted to overdose. When they sat on the couch to take the pills, they sat on the remote. And it switched to K24.
What?
And I was speaking about
what are the chances?
Exactly. Imagine. So imagine that is what everyone has the capacity to do if we just make this a normal conversation. And we just need to normalize it among our peers. We don't have to wait to come to a radio station or like go to church. It's when we are hanging out with our buddies, can we honestly just have this conversation? Because that's where the real stigma is. When people are saying, mtu anafia tu squeezy, and people laugh and cheers and go on with their life, you know. Let's normalize having this conversation in our family settings, with our friends, with our workmates, and just serious conversations.
By the way, let me ask you, you mentioned stigma and how your ex didn't want, people to know your situation at that particular moment. What about people outside Nairobi, outside the bigger cities? Do they embrace this conversation like an actual challenge that's affecting, society? For example, now, Uko Shago in the villages, is the government actually leading this conversation? Individuals like you, are they there? I guess they're just dying in silence.
What's happening is I've seen a lot of initiatives in churches. I was privileged at the beginning of the year to have this conversation with members of a big circle in this country. So I went around the country having conversations about mental illness and mental wellness. And those were like really grassroots conversations because we were speaking to like 1,000 people, 800 people, like circle members in the villages. So I'm seeing like some initiative is happening.
It's gaining traction.
Level 4 hospitals have a psychiatric department and psychology. You just pay a card for 100 bob. You go see a psychologist or psychiatrist. So I'm thinking we have moved. But then what needs to happen now is we need to stop from having that conversation on this level. We need to come to where we hang out, where we work, where we
regular people.
People.
Working Kenyans,
exactly. And just asking, how are you? Like, how are you really? How are you feeling? Do you feel any challenge? Is there in any way somebody can help you? And these are questions that we can incorporate in our daily life. Asking somebody, is there somewhere you feel challenged? And you would need somebody to help you. Even if it's not me, just tell me. I might know somebody, Because sometimes the challenge is just that I don't have a way forward. And that stresses you and stresses you and stresses you. And maybe if you share, the burden will be half solved.
Let me ask you, by the way, when you look at from a macro level, I remember when we just started this conversation, I was talking about the psyche of the nation. And truly you can tell that people are disturbed. No one knows where we're headed. Guys are just staying strong, which is not a bad thing. But, if you look at the productivity of our people, the economy in itself, don't you think if we just work on our mental state, it would make a huge difference when it comes to the productivity of our country in terms of the workspaces, in terms of our sports, in churches, in schools, you know what I mean? Don't you think we're going to see an actual, shift in terms of returns, positive returns, families at the office? The guys are actually going to start producing more, living better lives. So it's important for this nation to take seriously the psyche of its people. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. But then I also have a plot twist to that. Kenyans are very resilient.
Is that a bad thing or a good
thing?
The
thing that, resilience is about how fast are you able to bounce back from a challenge.
Of course.
That's a good thing.
Okay.
But then what has happened is that as we are trying to, because we are being pushed to a corner, so we start to develop mechanisms to cope.
There you go.
Right? Because the situation is not changing. And sometimes we don't have the capacity, like you have reached your mental capacity to deal with something. So your mind, in its way to help you, creates a mechanism to help you cope. And maybe that's why we are very we are comedians, all of us, you know.
Wow, that's a good observation.
Yeah,
we crack jokes to forget our reality.
Exactly, it's a deflection because we need to cope, because we can't stay in this high stress situation and be able to function. I need to wake up tomorrow and go to work, and I'm feeling depressed. So how do I do it? My mind creates a mechanism. I deflect. So what I'm saying is, Kenyans, by their resilience, are first of all, we are very hardworking people. I feel like we are very productive people. The thing that is not supporting us is the environment. You see, even in mental health, it's not that there's something wrong with me. It's the environment. This environment is not conducive for me. Anybody can go crazy. So is
coping a bad thing or a good thing?
Coping is a good thing to a certain point.
Okay.
You see, and that's why it becomes, that's why we teach skills. That's why we teach ways of getting out, so that you stop coping and actually transcend the challenge. Because coping will keep you on survival mode for a long time. It will wear you out. It's like being chased by a lion for eternity.
Wow.
You know, your body is trying to generate resources as you are running. You're not resting. You know, that's what is happening. So now we need to create environment, and that's why leadership is so important.
There you go.
That's why the environment is key, because if the leadership is not creating an environment for us to chill and kulamba glucose.
I have a question. And this is about I've experienced rather some situations where we kind of like could not understand if these rehabilitation centers are really working.
Yes.
Rehabs are very expensive in Kenya, especially if you want to take your family member or someone close to your loved one to a rehabilitation center. It's expensive. You go there and there's this, there's just consistent injections, and then the person has been there for close to 3 months, 4 months.
Yeah.
I don't know, do you feel like some of these rehabilitation centers just make money out of people's illnesses and mental situations? And do these rehabs really work sometimes, or is it just an incubation period for whatever situation people are going through?
You know, it's funny because I've worked in rehab. During COVID, I was actually working with rehabs. I was doing programs with rehabs. I was doing recovery coaching. There's not a wholesome understanding of the problem of addiction. Yeah, most of the rehabs do not deal with the cause of the addiction, and most of the causes of the addiction is family dysfunction.
Okay,
you understand?
Yeah.
Family dysfunction creates addicts, and most of the time, the people who are taking the person to the rehab are the ones who have caused the problem in the first place. And that's why when the person gets out after 9 days, they go back to that environment. They are triggered again because it's a family dysfunction thing. And I've actually done a whole course on family dysfunction and how we take up different roles based on the dysfunction. And there's a lot of trauma in the family setup that causes these problems. Because think about it, the setup you grew up, your parents are not perfect per se. So you have some unmet emotional needs, right? These emotional needs means that you're getting into your own relationships with a deficiency, hoping the other person will meet your emotional needs. That's already a dysfunction. So kids come into this dynamic and they can sense the energy, the connection, the disconnection between you and your spouse, and they fit into a certain role to diffuse the tension of this tension between you two. And one of them takes all the emotions of the family setup and they're like, I can't handle this, I'll take a drink, I'll take a smoke, and they become addicted. And now you guys, because you don't want to face the real problem, which is your relationship, you're like, he's the problem. Because he's the one who's bringing you guys together to discuss. You never talk about anything else other than this person. And so imagine now taking this person and expecting them to heal in 3 months.
And bringing them back.
And they are 20-something, 30-something years. And we come and give you all our money. We are like, fix him. We messed him up all this time, but you fix him in 3 months. And that's why rehabs are like that, because addiction is like hypertension. You have to be patient. It's about managing. It might never go, you never know. You know, there is also very little trauma-informed therapy in rehabs, because these people are also traumatized by the whole situation. Like, I'm trying to drink, I'm messing my life, I'm messing my relationships. So it's very difficult to treat addiction, and we are really less equipped in this country. And so I know some rehabs take the shortcut because they want you to think it has worked so that you can bring them more customers.
Of course, it's in business.
Some guys give people pills so that they lose that need to drink for a while, but they go home after a while, they relapse. And we are not educating the family enough. We are not, and the families are not willing. All the sessions I ever had, family therapy, I used to tell the co-caregiver, who is mostly the enabler, I'm like, you are the one who needs therapy. Trauma. They're like, no, I'm okay, I'm fine. That one is the problem.
The enabler is taking out all the stress on his family, her family.
Yeah. Exactly. And there's also that family image thing.
Oh, yes.
So atutaki family iaibishwe because of this person falling in mutaros and all these things. Yeah. So we are going to lock him up there, and, we are the good ones, they are the problem.
So is it possible then for, let's say, some of our older parents, and you can see they were broken from way back. Yes. It's just that they suppressed that.
Yeah.
You can hear they're constantly complaining about loans, government. Oh, your dad is always like this. Now they even take it out on each other. At some point, let's say mom is in her 70s or her 60s, or even dad, for example.
Yeah.
And you can say, Njenga, they've been through so much, they're very stressed.
Yeah.
Is that late to get therapy at that age? Because you're saying if you've been accumulating all these stresses all these years.
Yeah.
Can we make significant progress when they start going to, let's say, for example, they visit somebody like you, like a mental health coach?
Yeah.
Can they actually recover? At that particular moment, we're just managing it now.
When it comes to addiction, so now the person has to be brought, because remember, they are not psychologically developed. That's why they develop this addiction, because it's like a kid who has big emotions. They are not able to manage them. So they lack some basic skills like, personal responsibility. They don't feel like they can handle their own life. And so they have to be codependent with somebody else who can take part of their responsibility. So when it comes to addiction, there it's like 70% possibility of recovery. That's always the case.
For older people.
But for older people, they say you can't teach old dogs new tricks, because what you're shifting is the mind. And now when it's addiction, the brain is affected.
Because it's used to a pattern, a certain way of doing things and thinking.
And it's been deteriorated by the drugs or alcohol. So even their brain, when they do an MRI, they actually can tell you these parts of the brain are dormant because of this addiction. So they can't even reason the way you and I can reason. So it's a bit quite difficult. And so we also have to bring that to the society and say, how can we cope with these people in a way that does not deteriorate our own mental health? Because I know when you're dealing with somebody with substance abuse or even mental illness, it can drain you. You need to also learn your own self-care routine. You also have to generate your own support system. You have to get your own care. Otherwise, you'll go down that road as well.
Or you're going to hurt other people. They usually say hurt people.
Yeah. 100%.
So it sounds like all of this comes back down to communication and it being a big issue in our work lives, in our private lives, in our family lives. So to the person who's listening, despite their ages, how do you break the first barrier of actually communicating around the topic, the problem that is causing all of this, so that they can start their process of transforming their mental health state?
I think the first thing is when it comes to communication, it's interesting because I'm also a communication trainer. You have to have a certain level of acceptance of how you are, who you are, where you are, so that you can have the clarity of what do I need, what do I want to communicate, and what is the intention of my communication. Because the more clear you are, the more open and authentic you are, the more likely you're going to get to the other person, because that's how to have a heart to heart. If I am willing to own my experience and I'm willing to share it and ask for help as my way of being personally responsible for myself, then I can communicate clearly to the other person. I was actually thinking about major challenges in families and workplaces that can only be solved by communication. And it's just helping people to not be defensive, because when you have your own agenda or you're hiding something, people can sense, or you don't want to say something. Sometimes we communicate to hide. Like, I want to say this so that I don't have to say this. And people can sense what's off with that. And communication is a very key thing. So be clear, be authentic, allow yourself vulnerability, because vulnerability is part of resilience, you know. Sharing a bit of your experience to somebody who you know can add value to your experience.
And you're somebody who can add a lot of value to many Kenyans out there.
Absolutely.
If somebody wants to reach out to you for, just to further this conversation or at least get some help, how can they do that?
So my main platform is Facebook. So Carolyne Gaithuma on Facebook. You can DM me. I'm on Instagram. I'm on TikTok. All those platforms. So if you DM me, I'm very quick to respond.
Yeah.
I'll reach out. I'll direct you to either my online programs that I do, or any resources that I have, or even if it's another practitioner that I can share. I also have done a show it's called Being Me, and it's a show where I was showcasing different forms of therapies and modalities for mental wellness. It's not just coaching and counseling. There are so many, and Nairobi is a hub of so many. I did a season of 13 episodes. I didn't even talk about coaching and counseling.
Are you serious?
There was pranic healing, there's body talk, there's personal regression. Like, so many things are available in this Nairobi. So if you're one of those people who don't like to talk and you want your mental health sorted, there's a modality for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. All right, Steph.
So music is a nice way that most people can calm down.
Yes.
So I'm going to take you down memory lane. What was that one song for you that used to calm you down? You're having, stressful day, especially during your younger times.
I remember music for me is like, so it might not be the song, but what it reminds me of, that kind of like where a song reminds you of a time in your life, or a day where the sun was hitting the right spot, or the wind was just blowing. It's not the lyrics of the song. So there's this song by Always Be My Baby, Mariah Carey.
You're the second person who's requested that tune.
Really?
Yeah, and we have so many listeners who love that song.
You're such a millennial.
That song it hit in 1996.
It was so dope.
I remember, and we were going, I was in class 8. Don't calculate my age, please. So
sometimes like,
okay, fine, we know, it's okay. It's a free space.
And you already said I'm millennial. So we were going to the coast. It was the first time I was going to the coast. And it was like just an amazing, and we were in this big bus and we were just dancing shuffle in the aisle of the bus.
Wow.
So when that song comes on, it reminds me of that vibe, that it puts me in that energy. And music is another thing that you can do. By the way, don't leave your house before you dance if you want to have a good day.
Awesome. That's some good insight.
Yeah, for real?
Yeah.
Like, just put on some music and dance before you leave the door. That will spike your energy. It will give you a positive outlook. Even if you're stuck in traffic for 3 hours, you won't be irritable. It will. So just try and hike your mood with music at the beginning of the day.
Yeah, I love music. So I'm definitely going to hook you up with Always Be My Baby.
Yay!
That's a dope one. Thank you so much for coming through, Carolyne Gaithuma. It's been real. You're such a vibe. And I like how you're so grounded and so chill.
Aww.
Yeah, we can converse for hours on.
Definitely.
I love your vibe, you guys.
Yeah, for real?
I'm so
Thanks
glad that I came here physically. I love it online because I'm like, ooh, you guys are just...
Isn't it?
Yeah, and it feels the same here also.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, energy to recognize, real energy recognize real energy.
Exactly.
You can tell.
Exactly. Thank you.
Easy. So now, when we come back, Stephanie, JP, this country of ours. So I was telling you how in the country, many companies are actually laying off Kenyans. So I'll just give you a rundown of some of these companies. It's so sad. Like, we should actually empathize with our brothers and our sisters out there. And that's why I felt like this conversation for tonight was so important. Because just because you've been laid off, just because, for example, you've lost somebody important in your family, just because you're feeling down right now, doesn't mean you shouldn't have hope. Doesn't mean you shouldn't envision a future where you're thriving. You know what I mean? Where you're in abundance. Like, you can always bounce back. That's one thing we love about humanity. You know what I mean? Thank you so much, Carolyne, once again. You're a real one. Sawa. Right now, it's 8:23. When we come back, Kenya, taifa letu. Nimewaita mara ngapi? I think twice. I've mentioned that name Kenya twice. It's not even funny.